Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the Young Global Leaders event for July 2023, focused on our leadership as a young global leader. My name is Katie Keith. I'm the Executive Director for the Global Chamber here in London, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to host this month's session for young global leaders. We are focused on leadership for young global leaders, and thanks to those who are all joining us live on the call today. We look forward to an interactive session with you. I'd also like to say hello to those who are watching the recording via our Global Chamber YGL platform or through one of our partners. Please reach out for any questions post-event because we're happy to help. Before I introduce our keynote speaker and our speaker today, I'd like to share a bit more about Global Chamber. We're a global community focused on international trade and investment. And having launched the Young Global Leaders Initiative program, or relaunched the program in 2023, it is preceding a series of great events and meetings dedicated to young global leaders hosted over the past few years. So this year is very exciting because throughout the program, we look to offer you valuable resources for the professional development of yourselves in a globalized world. So it has consisted and will consist of 10 monthly sessions that cover different topics ranging from leadership, branding, lectured by global experts in our field. And upon completion of the program, participants will receive a diploma from Global Chamber for their participation in the Young Global Leader program. During this session for our Young Global Leader for July, we're going to hear from experts that will help you develop leadership skills and will support you with your career path. Our speakers today are Michael Quigley, who is the CEO, founder at Kataholos, and he's our keynote today. We also have Gibson Sigauke, who's founding president of Thunderbird Venture Capital and Private Equity Club, and he's our Young Global Leader guest and speaker this evening and this morning. So without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker, Michael Quigley. Michael's worked for over 10 years in both the public sector as a teacher and the private sector as a business owner, author, trainer, and keynote speaker. Michael is truly passionate about helping you to achieve your potential as a leader. Michael really is the person who's there for you, who has your back, who gives you the encouragement, the tools, the opportunities, and the belief to empower and enable you to become the leader that you would like to be. If your main value is integrity and you feel the call towards becoming your best self, but are a bit unsure as how to get to best approach this, Michael is here to show you what has worked for his clients. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Michael, who's going to take the floor as our keynote today.
Thank you very much, Katie. Hello, everybody. It's lovely to be with you today. Down here, it's amazing that you're here. If you could please put in the chat box, where are you today in the world? And what time of, is it day, is it night? And if you're watching this on a recording, haha, caught you out, right? But it's just really good to know where everybody is. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing from Gibson. It's nice to meet you, Gibson, and to be hearing your questions. So as I'm talking, I want you to be thinking, I've got a question for him. The better the question, usually because it's the harder the question. So I like difficult questions. So if you sat there going, yeah, but what about this? What about this? Please ask at the end of an opportunity. So I've been given 30 minutes to speak on leadership, and hopefully at the end of this 30 minutes, you'll have some material you think, yeah, that's helpful for me. I understand that. I can use that in my life. I like to keep things pretty simple. If you've got a pen and some paper, that'd be really good to make some notes. I don't expect you to remember any of this. Rewatch the recording, make your notes. Seriously, it's very, very important that you can take this stuff forward. So anytime we're talking about anything, we have to start by understanding what is it. So that's the first thing I'd like to write down, your concept. What is your concept of leadership? You ask 10 different people, you'll get 10 different questions. And there's no right or wrong answers with this. But I'm going to give you a definition that works for me and that works for my clients. So the first thing is you've got to understand what is it. The definition I'm going to use today is by a man called Anthony Iannarino, Innarino. He is an American, I think potentially Canadian, sales trainer, B2B, business owner, public speaker, keynote speaker. He's very good. And I want to use this one because it's very tangible. So he says, quote, a leader is someone who is accountable for improving the future. That's it, right? Accountable, you could swap that word for responsible. So if you are responsible or accountable to other people for improving their future, in whatever form that is, as a mother, as a sister, as a business owner, yeah, as a professional, as a student, you are a leader. So congratulations, pat on the back. I like that because it's very tangible and we can sit here and go, yeah, that makes sense. That's something I'm interested in. If there's no accountability, then you can just talk all day. Who cares? And if you're trying to improve the future, I'd like to think everybody here today is here because we want to improve the future. All right. So we've got a definition, nice and simple. What I thought would be really helpful for you would be to give you some guiding principles. So that's the second step of anything. Once you know what it is, a principle is not a top tip. It's not a strategy. It's not a plan. A principle is a guiding truth that you can return to again and again and again and again. And it's still true in 10 years and 100 years. Some of the guiding principles that have been endured of global culture have lasted for thousands of years. So I've got 6 from a guy who I highly, highly rate, 4 of my own. And if I've got time, I've got a bonus one. All right. So hopefully that sounds good. So a lot of the material, these first 6, come from a guy. I'm going to put his name in the chat box. His name is Charles Handy. So please, if you enjoyed this material, go on YouTube, go on Google, check out Charles Handy. Charles Handy is an Irish philosopher, business owner, management guy. He's writing books on leadership in the 1970s. He knows his stuff. And I've got 6 of his principles as well as 4 of my own. Okay. And if you're wondering, what do I know about leadership? I've written a book on it. Yeah. Hold myself accountable. These are my words out in the world. Yeah. Very, very important that you know I hold myself accountable. So this is the first principle if you want to be a leader. Number 1, please write this down. You can handle open-ended problems. Just think about a problem you've got in your life, in your business, with your family, your health. And there are many problems around the world, and a lot of them are open-ended, meaning you can't solve them today. No matter how hard you try, they might involve lots of different people, lots of different moving parts, and that is okay. A good leader understands that and doesn't try to force things. I've got several open-ended problems in my life right now, and that's okay. Yeah. So one of the worst things we can do is think personally we have to solve everything, and yes or no, right or wrong. And that's the first thing. Open-ended problems. An open-ended problem might be, what is the next thing we need to do to get to that next level? And you don't know, but you're okay with not knowing for today, but it keeps bugging you. Keep thinking about it. Keep thinking about it. That is an open-ended problem. All right. So an open-ended problem could be related to your country where you are, could be related to your family, but that's the first thing. It's okay to have a lot of these kind of mental tabs in your brain open and you're working on them. And then you might have a breakthrough moment. That is an open-ended problem, okay? The second guiding principle is linked to that, which is if you're a leader, you're able to differentiate between people and situations. So please write that down. You can tell the difference between people and situations. If you want to get terrible results from people, treat them like they're a problem. And they're down tools and you've lost them. When I used to be a teacher of children, if I ever had a go at them, mentally, inwardly, their heart just closed. I've lost them. So think about a problem that you've got that's open-ended. Who are the people involved? But then what are the situations? There's nothing worse than treating a person like a problem. And they'll know, by the way, if you treat somebody like they are the problem. Have you ever been treated like that? It's not nice, is it? And somebody makes you feel like there's something wrong with you. So a good leader doesn't do that. You're able to go, oh, he's great. He's just made this mistake in this area because he's new. That's fine. We can solve that. I put a bit of video out today about good leaders saying they're nice and calm, nice and consistent, and they care. Oh, we can solve that. Don't worry. How? Don't know. We'll figure it out together. Yeah. So that's what you're doing. You're able to differentiate between the person and the situation rather than treating people like problems. We don't do that. The third one is a very important one. The third guiding principle is leaders have very strong, what's called self-concept. They know themselves. There's a reason why that phrase has been around for thousands of years. Know thyself. Yeah. I'm not Gibson. Gibson's not John. John's not Katie. And that's great. It's what we love in the Global Chamber. We're all different people, but we have to have a strong understanding of who we are. And that takes time and effort and mistakes and all sorts of craziness. Yeah. But if you don't have a strong self-concept, it can be difficult because people that do can end up kind of, telling you what to do, or you feel you have imposter syndrome. I can't do this. And who am I to tell these people what to do? X, Y, and Z. So how do you have a clear self-concept? You make it an effort to get to know yourself and work on yourself and treat yourself well, yeah, and know what your vision is for where you're trying to go. What are your values? What's important to you in life? Forget everybody else. Just sit and think about it for yourself. And then what happens is, once you know that, that's very attractive to people, because you're just being authentic and just being you. And the right people will love that, by the way. That's something I was never told in leadership. Yeah, the right people for you will just love your approach, just by you being you. You have a very strong self-concept. You can lead people fantastically well, whether you're Jacinda Ardern or Gandhi, right? They have very strong self-concept on who they are. The Global Chamber has a very strong self-concept on its mission, what it's trying to do. Imagine if it didn't. It'd be really confusing, wouldn't it? Okay. Hopefully you can see the reason I've chosen these principles as well is to stay away from cultural and contextual changes and variations. I don't want to give you something that just works in Europe. See how this works. I'm trying to give you stuff that works no matter where you are in the world. The fourth one is a very important point. So please write this. Leaders have high reservoirs of energy. Look at the word reservoir. You're not familiar with that? It's like a deep body of water. Doesn't mean they have high energy levels. You've got deep reserves to draw from. So it's not just, I want to make a lot of money. Why? Where are you drawing that energy from? How do you replenish what I call your battery levels? Charles Handy calls it your deep reservoir. He's got better words than I have. Yeah, but you need to have those energy levels. And leaders, we can't rely on other people to do it for us. We have to say, how can I take care of myself so my energy levels are good for my team? Yeah. How can I work effectively rather than just working as hard as I can? You've got those reserves to draw from. And a really nice thought is, if you don't know where to draw from, there are always people that will help you. There's a wonderful man called Professor Steve Peters, who wrote a brilliant book called The Chimp Paradox. One of his principles of leadership is, there's always people that will help you in life. Always people that will help you. I love that. Because sometimes we feel like we have to do it on our own. We don't. We take the accountability to improve the future. We need to be able to draw from somewhere, be it a religious faith, support group, an image in your mind, whatever it is, if it gives you that, absolutely. So somebody says, can you elaborate on the second principle? Sure. What I'll do when I'm finished, I'll come back to it as a point. Second principle is people and situations, how they're a bit different. So I'll keep going. I'll come back to that if you're happy with that. So as well as your energy, the fifth principle is we have to set and maintain high standards for ourselves and for our colleagues, for everybody. Yeah. There's some really good work done by Tony Robbins. I rate his stuff very highly. And he says, nobody rises above low expectations. Improve your standards. And like we said before, it's not about working harder necessarily. It's just about setting your own standards. If you don't set your own high standards as a leader from within, somebody else will set them for you. And they might not have as high standards as you, or they might be totally out of whack with what you're capable of doing. But you set the standards and you hold yourself accountable and you hold your colleagues accountable. They might not always thank you for it, but it's always the right thing to do. I don't know a single person who's thanked me for lowering standards around them and saying, I don't expect much from you. Imagine if somebody said that to you right now, I don't expect much from you. You just think, why? What's wrong with me? So we have to make sure we set these standards. Yeah. And then the sixth one from Charles Handy, before we move on to mine, is to be prepared to receive feedback and seek appropriate advice. Now let's look at the wording of that. Really, really important. To receive feedback. It's very, very easy to take things way too personally. The moment someone critiques us, we think, oh, they're having a go at me. They don't like me. No. They might just be giving you some feedback. We've got to seek it out. So a platform like this is a brilliant place to receive feedback from your peers, from each other, from other people. So if you don't receive feedback, you're not a leader. Because as John C. Maxwell says, if you don't have followers, you're just a guy or a woman taking a walk on their own. And I'd say the opposite of a leader is not even a follower. It's just somebody who's lost. So if you don't have any feedback from other people, how do you know if what you're doing is the right thing? So let's look at the second bit, appropriate advice. Don't go around asking everybody's opinion, because some people either don't like you or they don't know what they're talking about. You have to have trusted people that you can go to regularly. And when they talk, you think, I'm going to listen to them because they know me, they know my situation. They've either been there or they've further down the line, I can learn from them. It's very important that you're able to receive feedback from appropriate people. I got a really good compliment last year. This guy said, I'm going to give you some tips to make you better. Is that okay? I said, sure. I wrote them down. He said, I like you, Mike. I said, why? He said, because you're coachable. I said, what do you mean? He says, if I'm trying to help you, you're willing to listen and learn. I said, are most people not like that? I said, no. 9 out of 10 people will sit there thinking they know everything. And if I try to offer to help them to improve, they just do that. He said, you're not like that. So I like that from Charles Hardy. Yeah, we don't know everything. That's why we're here. I'm going to learn from Gibson. I'm going to learn from you guys. I'm here to learn as well. So those are 6 from him, but I wanted to add some more of my own, because the work I do is consistently working with leaders. And by the way, leadership can be very, very lonely, very stressful, very difficult. But if you've got your high reservoirs of energy, you're setting your standards and you've got people to support you, you'll be fine. Right? So my number 7, one of my first ones, is please make sure you've got a support team in place. And there's 3 different types of people that should be on your support team, your little team. It's like, go, 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 you can do it. Yeah. First one is a medical professional. I am not a doctor, probably never will be. I don't try to be. There are times when you need a medical doctor, a GP, a surgery, the hospital, mental health medication. You break your leg. I don't know what it is, but something's going to happen down the line. Yeah. And you need those medical professionals or medicine or whatever it is to support you, because leadership is the long game. So you need to have that person or that place. Second thing is you have to have somebody who supports you. So just think right now, who could you text if you said, oh, I'm having a terrible day? And they're like, it's okay. I love you anyway. You know, who is that? Or you could email them, or you could go for a hug. Who is that person? You don't want them to solve your problems. You don't need their insights. Just want somebody to give you a bit of love, right? And then the third person, which is really important, is somebody who's going to hold you accountable. Like we said right at the start, you're not accountable to anybody. You're not a leader. So who's going to hold you accountable? Is it your clients? Is it your family? Do you have a coach or a trainer? Do you have a mentor? Do you have a line manager? Do you have the shareholder investors? You know, who are those people that are going to hold you accountable and say, hey, come on, you said you were going to do this. Really important to have those people. And by the way, if you're sat there going, I don't know, that's okay. Because then when you don't know, you can think, I need to go find these people. So having that support team ensures that you're not on your own. Look at this platform. It's amazing. It's a form of support, isn't it? Development for you guys to help you. The 8th principle, which is really important, is you need to know your values and your vision. And I'll put them in that order. Your values, what is life all about? What matters to you? Is it integrity? Is it fairness? Is it, I don't know, learning, competition? What means the world to you? If you cut you open now and you say, oh, for me, lifelong learning, integrity, loving kindness, they are my values. And I live them every single day. The reason I'd start with your values is you might not have a vision. You might not, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know. That's fine. Too many people expect themselves to have this vision straight away. I didn't have that. I'm still figuring it out as I go, right? But if you know your values, you can know when you're being true to yourself. Because we don't want to lie and we don't want to be inauthentic, trying people please and be no. We want to be able to say, there's Katie. She's always this. This is what's important to her. I know her value. She values integrity. Working with it. If, by the way, you don't know these vision and values, one of the things, Katie, I'm going to do is I'm going to do a massive list that we can send out in an email of resources. You know, I've got blogs, I've got videos, podcasts. I've got lots of resources that we can send them to you. And there's exercise in there that you can do to help you. Okay. So if you're sat there going, yeah, I know my values, I know what I'm all about, great. If you've got a vision that you're making real, that this is where we're going, I can see it, great. And if you sat there going, I have neither of those things, but I want to learn, please, great. We've got stuff to support you. The 9th principle, which is something that I feel very strongly about, and is very relevant to us as a global audience, is this. There are 8 billion people in the world now. What is your plan for that? So that's thinking, what is your plan for being one of 8 billion people in what I call global family? Probably get to 10 billion. What is your plan for that? For example, is it, you think, I don't know, and maybe we could work internationally. I need to understand different types of people. I need to understand all different things. For me, very simple. I make sure I've got a lot of love in my heart. Sounds soppy. I don't care. That's my approach. Wrote a book on it. Yeah. If you have enough love in your heart, You do all sorts. The moment you run out of love, or you start treating people badly, yeah, money's not enough. Even relationships are not enough. So what is your plan for being one of 8 billion people? Once you start thinking on those levels, it gets really, really exciting. Leadership is an incredibly exciting thing, because as long as you're improving the future, do it your way, man. Have some fun. That's why I started my business. So what's your plan for being one of 8 billion? And even just thinking in that way, you will come up with all sorts of innovations and ideas that you never would if you were just thinking about your company, your country, your family. Think bigger. And then the 10th one, and I think I've got time for a bonus, Katie. This is really important. I like you to write these exact words if you're writing notes, please. Believe in your unlimited capacity to improve the future. I'm going to say it again. You've got to believe in your unlimited capacity to improve the future. Think about it. If you believe the future is just going to be terrible, why bother? And there's no limit on how good relationships can be if we put in the effort. There's no limit to how much money you can make and grow your business. There are no limits in that respect, because they all start up here and then we make them real. It's very, very important that you believe that your people, maybe the people that work for you, or your clients, your family or friends, the moment you start to put limitations on people, they can tell. The moment you start to put limitations on yourself, you can tell. The reason I'm saying this is when I used to be a primary school teacher and teach little kids, the most important thing before you teach them any subject is to say, not even with your words, just with how you relate to them, I think you're brilliant and you can do anything. Let's learn some stuff together. And as adults, don't we still need that message? I don't know about you, but most people don't have a lot of people saying that to them. But if you're saying that to people with how you lead them, that's incredible. Absolutely incredible. One of the best ways to delegate is to free people to do it their way. We're starting to understand that in a global context, but I think we've got a long way to go. That's why I love learning from different people. Have you ever had somebody who does it better than you do it? You know, I never thought of it like that. Amazing. Yeah, so please cultivate that. The future is completely unwritten. And one of the best things about leadership is we get to be the people that kind of go, right, well, what are we going to make out of it then? That's when it gets really, really exciting. This guy, I'll write his name in the chat box. He's one of my favorite ever motivational speakers, American guy. To me, he's one of the best leaders I've ever seen, Les Brown. He said, if you're a leader, you're not dealing with stuff you can see every day in front of you, tangible stuff. He says, you're like a wizard, you're casting spells. You're taking the invisible, making it visible. I bet you've all had things that just started, something in your heart or in your mind. And now it's a product. It's a team, it's a business. Yeah, it's a relationship. And it's very, very important that we consistently realize we need to keep tapping into what I call plugging into the mains. Yeah. Where did my book come from? No idea. I had some ideas, wrote it down. Where do my ideas come from? I love people and I learn from them and I keep working on myself and it just comes. But the moment I start to limit myself and say, oh, you've reached the mountaintop, don't try hard anymore. No. The accountability side of business is we must keep working towards something good for the future. Because if we don't, second law of thermodynamics kicks in, entropy. Things start to fall apart. Don't look after ourselves, we don't look after people. And if fear motivates you, by the way, here's a thought. If you're not defining your future, somebody's going to do it for you. And they might not like you as much as I like you, or you like yourself. So there's a real empowering message to that. Really, really empowering. Yeah. And by the way, it's not an age thing. I've had clients as old as 75. Charles Handy's in his 90s. He's still got a twinkle in his eye. I know some people, and they're much older than me. They're not at the level of development and leadership that you are on this call, because they think they know it all. You might have dealt with people like that. That's not good leadership. That's just being lost in a loop. You're not going to have a lot of friends. So I think I've got time, Katie, for one more. Is that right? Bonus one?
We sure do, Michael.
Yes. Okay. So I've either totally lost everybody or I've totally got you, because I'm seeing a lot of nodding. That's good. If you're watching the recording and nodding along, that's good as well. And then I will come back to the second point. All right, so bonus one. a big thing that happens to a lot of leaders, especially if you don't have a title that says I am the boss, is imposter syndrome. Yeah. Raise your hand if you've ever seen that, if you've ever felt that, experienced that. You're like, who am I to do this? Oh my, I'm going to get found out. Yeah. Right. I get it all the time. This is how you deal with it. Your authority to do what you want to do and be the leader, comes from two places. Your position, so there's positional authority. You have the title, you are the manager, you are the business owner, you are the husband, the father, the daughter. You have a title, some kind of title. That's positional authority. Think of the military, the commander or whoever's in charge. I've not been in the military. So you might have that. The second type of authority is called moral authority. It's who you are as a person, your values, your ethics. Just, do you know some people that you just think are amazing? They don't have a particular title. You just go to them for advice. They're just amazing people. And you're like, I need to learn from you. My father's one of them. I'm very fortunate. And so what I would recommend is keep working on both types of your authority. Keep improving your positional authority. Develop yourself. The fact you're getting a certificate, being part of this program, that is fantastic, because you're improving both your positional and your moral authority, going up and up and up and up. And the reason you know that's working, different opportunities start to come to you, better opportunities start to come to you, better people seem to just come to you. And it's not an accident. It's because you're working on yourself. And people don't say, well, who are you to be doing this? Yeah. I've never actually had somebody say that to me. Well, they do, just behind your back. All right. So it's really, really important, because there's another guy I'd recommend. We've got a whole lot of people I can send you on an email. And I'm aware that I've mentioned 3 men. There are many women as well. John C. Maxwell. John C. Maxwell got a brilliant approach, Maxwell, in the chat box. And he says, there are 5 levels to leadership. Title is just the first one. All right. So just because you've got the title, you've got the position, doesn't mean you are the leader. I really like that, because it makes you think, well, what's next? So reading back through them, we've looked at some stuff from Charles Handy, and we've gone for principles, because top tips are not enough. They're not enough. These are things that are going to be just as relevant in 2 years, 5 years, 100 years. 6 of them come from Charles Handy, so make sure you check out Charles Handy. Incredible guy. 4 of them come from myself. Not 5, include the bonus one. We have got time for questions, but before we do that, I just had somebody say, can you elaborate a little bit more on point 2? Absolutely. So point 2 was when we're saying you have to be able to differentiate between people and situations. So here's a way to do that. It's one of my techniques. It's called separation. Whenever you talk to people, say they've not performed particularly well, if you're trying to address that situation, all they're going to hear is, she doesn't like me. She doesn't like me. I'm going to be fired. Right? Because everybody takes things really personally. So this is what you do. You say, you're great. It's just this that needs to improve. And you separate, you make it very clear that it's nothing to do with the person. It's a temporary situation which can be improved, and you'd like their help with it. That's what he's talking about when he's saying differentiate between people and situations. Situations are temporary. Yeah? In situ, the phrase in situ means to be going from one to the other. Look at the etymology of the word. I'm a bit of a geek. So it's the people and situation are not the same thing. You're great, that's not. Can we improve it together? You hear the wording. Yeah. Most people would say, yeah, sounds good. Rather than, I think you need to X, Y, and Z. That's not differentiating. Anytime people come away thinking they're wrong, and equally, by the way, anytime you come away stroking somebody's ego, saying, you're great, you're great. I've never met somebody who can't improve, including me. All right. So hopefully that's helpful in terms of separating out the person from the situation. Person's great, situation can improve. So those are my 10, my little bonus. We will send you an email. I wrote a massive list for you. Recommended leaders I like, videos, podcasts, blogs, all things that we can do to take this further. And I think if I've done my timing right, Katie, we've got time for some questions, obviously, then I'm looking forward to hearing Gibson talk. By the way, just one thing I wanted to add, if it's helpful for you. Whenever you're dealing with anything, in this case it's leadership, you start with the concept, yeah? What is it? We've done that today. Then we've gone to principles. If you're wondering what comes next, I'll tell you now. The third bit is you create a strategy. So my strategy is from the heart, other people, servant leadership, situational adaptive leadership, all sorts of different strategies. Once you've got your strategy, then you make plans, what we're actually going to do. And then from your plans, you make your actions, you actually do things. you might have wondered kind of where's the link between principle and action, principle, strategy, plan, and action. So Katie, I'm going to hand back to yourself if there's any questions, and then over to Gibson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. A big round of applause. I'll be the noise in the room. Brilliant. I'm going to now open up for a couple of questions from our audience today, and then we're going to welcome Gibson, and then we'll also have extra time at the end for more Q&A and discussion. So if you'd like to unmute, put your hand up, and I'll call you to the virtual stage, or you can pop your question in the chat. Yan, hello.
Hi, thank you for delivering a great speech, Michael. I already edged on LinkedIn. I'm ASU Thunderbird student, current student, second year. I would like to know your 5-level leadership. First one is title. The last one is servant leadership, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, so if I understand you right, there's 2 questions there. Was the first bit that you wanted to know the 5 types of leadership from John C.
5 level, yeah, 5 stages.
Okay. Oh, to be honest, off the top of my head, I don't have it memorized. All I'll say is just Google it. Just Google John C. Maxwell, 5 types of leadership. The leader is the first one. Servant leadership that I mentioned, or situation adaptive, that's a completely different thing. So that was like a type of leadership. And then the John C. Maxwell 5 stages is like an approach you can take in your leadership. So hopefully I've clarified the 2. But yeah, off the top of my head, I haven't got it memorized.
It's okay, thank you. Yeah.
No, you're welcome. Good question.
Yeah.
Good question, Yan. And I do encourage you to look up the different styles of leadership and types and methodologies within leadership, because it is such a deep pool of information there, and we each resonate to different styles as well. I think it's so important, and what Michael was saying there around servant leadership. One more question before we hand over to Gibson. Would you like to raise your hand, or you can even pop it in the chat if you like? I'm sure there's going to be more questions at the end, and please feel free. Michael is staying on the call with us to the very end. So if you've got questions, you can pop them in the chat and Michael will be happy to answer them. And then we're going to open up for Q&A later. In the meantime, I'd like to welcome Gibson to the virtual stage, who is our guest speaker today. A second-year master's in global management, a student at the Thunderbird School of Global Management with a concentration in global business with an emphasis on finance. Gibson is currently a CFA candidate as well. So at Thunderbird, Gibson was selected for the Competitive Share Fellowship, Thunderbird's prestigious full scholarship and executive mentorship program. And he's also the founding president of the Thunderbird Venture Capital and Private Equity Club. Very impressed, Gibson, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you now. If you'd like to unmute and take the virtual stage, over to you.
Thank you so much, Katie, and nice to meet you, Michael. Great nuggets, the great pieces of leadership. I will just speak by giving, and narrate on my, my journey. I am from Zimbabwe, so I think people will learn from if I just speak about myself and where I am from and what has happened with my life. So to start with, my name is Gibson. I am from Zimbabwe, and I came to the US about 2 years ago. And I had done some entrepreneurial ventures back home in Zimbabwe. My first and primary educational training was on pharmacy. So I am a registered pharmacist. I have been in the healthcare for some time, working in the manufacturing of what we call generic medicines or generic drugs. And I also worked in the healthcare systems like hospitals and regulation. So I had started some entrepreneurial ventures in my country, my home country, Zimbabwe, at some point in time. And I realized that the challenges that I was facing at that point in time had to do with a lot of capital. And also I lacked kind of like a global mindset that I really wanted, because when I was traveling to India, to China, and to all these other countries, I realized that people are different and we live with different cultural systems. And I started to wonder if I can learn more about this global mindset. And that took me to Thunderbird. And when I came to Thunderbird, I made kind of a shift. I was already making a shift because already I was doing some entrepreneurial ventures in my home country. So I started to do a lot of things to do with finance. So I shifted a bit from the healthcare pharmacist track that I was actually working and living all my life while I was in Zimbabwe. I ended up founding the Venture Capital and Private Equity Club at Thunderbird, just to encourage students to network within this field and also to understand how the American financial ecosystem actually works. How does it work when you're raising venture capital, and how does it work when you are managing companies as an investor and things like that? Because that's actually what usually moves the world. You know, all these big companies, at some point in time, they received capital from outside investors in one way or the other. So yes, so that is basically what I did. And then I graduated in May, this past May. And while I was still a student at Thunderbird, I had started to work on my idea, which I call Sigauke. And it's basically a fintech company that is trying to improve financial inclusion in Africa. So what we do is we send money to Africa, and then we give people credit scores based on how they receive money from their relatives who are, say, for example, in America or in UK or wherever in Europe. And then we can also then lend money based on that credit score, just to try and increase in leverage on the remittances that are already happening between the first world or the Western world and Africa. I then also launched more of like a consulting company where I'm helping small businesses with things like to do with their exit strategy. I realized that a lot of small businesses here in the United States of America, they're kind of like neglected. No one really, come to them to speak about growth strategy, about exit strategy. And a lot of family-owned businesses don't have a strategy of how they're going to exit. But one thing is sure, that any founder or owner of a business will exit that business at one point in time. You might voluntarily do so, or you might just find yourself out of that business in one way or the other. So it is better for you to actually plan your strategy yourself and work on that while at least you are still able to do that. So that is the other thing that I'm working on right now on my consulting company, just to help ordinary business owners on how they can actually do growth strategy and how they can bring clarity to their exit strategy. And in doing all these things, the greatest thing that I actually learned myself, I know it will be different with many other people, even here, is when you should not necessarily, like what Michael was saying, it's not about the title, but it's about, clarity on how you can be, how you can help other people to become better versions of themselves. How you can improve their destinies, like actually what Michael was explaining recently. And that's what I discovered. Like myself, I come from Africa, and I always tease my American friends, and I'm like, the entrepreneurial system in America is not solving needs, it is solving wants. Like Amazon did not really solve a problem. What it did is it made us able to buy more easily and more conveniently. It's just a teasing mentality that I always speak with my American friends. But in places like Africa and other developing countries, there are real problems, like water problems. Like people don't have clean water. Like people don't have things like internet. People don't have bank accounts. They will grow up and they will actually get to a place where they will leave this world without a bank account. They don't even know what it means to really be included financially and things like that, right? Some parts of the country, of the world are still illiterate, right? I think in Zimbabwe, we have got one of the high illiteracy rates in the world, being an African country. But I know that there are a lot of other parts of the world where people cannot really read and write. So my approach is, as a leader, you just need to solve problems. And I think problems are everywhere. It just depends with your culture, how the problems are evolving and at what level the problems are at now, whether they are still really core needs or whatever need or whatever want is there, it's still a problem. So I think leadership, to start with, it starts with trying to identify the problems that people are facing and then trying to solve those problems. And I know a lot of people focus too much on their qualifications, like their degrees. Oh, I did this degree, or I'm in this pathway, or I did that. But I think leadership is about seeing a problem and then trying to solve it, no matter where you're coming from. I think if you really need the experience, you can then start to do a lot of internships, work around with people who are in that field to learn about how to solve those problems. And that's exactly what I did when I came to the United States of America. I shifted gears and I started to speak with people who in the venture capital world, people who in private equity. I ended up landing an internship with a venture capital firm and learned a lot about how to raise capital, how to evaluate companies, how to work with startups, speak with founders, how to bring strategic clarity in terms of the pain gap, product market fit, and things like that. And that helped me a lot. And it actually launched me into this place right now where I'm very clear when I'm working with founders of small businesses or founders of startups about how to solve their problems internally so that they can solve the external problem. So I think leadership sometimes is about guts, you know, and people speak a lot about the why. And I think that is very important. Like, why are you living? Why are you existing? What is your purpose? What problem are you solving? How are you trying to make people the better versions of themselves? And once you start from there, as Michael was saying, I think people will start to support you. And if you are coachable and you're also trying to surround yourself with people who can actually help you, then no one knows the future, but you can try and create a future where you can solve that problem in a better way. Because as long as people are willing to support you, usually the future is bright. The other concept that I learned quickly is, as a pharmacist, leadership also is about other people. Like as a pharmacist, you have to, okay, my computer's just misbehaving here, but I'm okay, all right. As a pharmacist, you just have to believe in other people. Like you're working with a group of, I was once a manager of people who were about 75, and it was my signature that would release medicines and verify and kind of authorize that this medication has been made with the right procedures, and it meets the specifications that is required by the regulators. So I was signing for that product, but there were about 70 people involved in the process of making that product. You have to believe in them. You have to know that they're competent, and you have to create an environment where they think you're part of that team and they don't think of sabotaging you. So the other lesson that I really learned today is leadership is about leading teams. You can actually start to try, like in my fintech company right now, I do not know how to code. I don't know how to do a lot of other things, you know, that people in the fintech space actually do, like writing code and doing all these things. But what I understood is I can come up with strategic clarity on the problem that we're trying to solve. And in doing so, I can come up with a team that can then work with me to do that. So I think, thank you so much, Katie. That's what I have right now. I think we can move to the next segment.
Thank you so much, Gibson. A big round of applause. Honestly, I think that it's just been brilliant listening to your story. Thank you. I love storytelling, and you have a really interesting one. And congratulations on all of your achievements in the US. I think there was a common golden thread for me, and I wrote this down, and I don't know if it resonates with both you and Michael. It's people and purpose before profits. And I think if we do it in that order, we're leading with the best foot forward. And I think there was a golden thread between Michael and yourself in terms of, you know, what your purpose is, your why, questioning yourself, checking in. Really valuable stuff here. We've got plenty of time for discussion, questions. This is the time where all of the participants can unmute, put your hand up. Let's have a conversation about what leadership actually means for you. I'm curious about, you know, what did you pick up today? What are you going to question about today? And what are your thoughts about leadership? Please, this is the forum. Let's start asking. If you'd like to speak, pop your hand up. And I'll just remove these pins so we can see everybody. Any thoughts? Nicole.
Hi, Katie. Hi, Michael and Gibson as well. Thank you so much for speaking today. It was super insightful. I had a question actually about imposter syndrome, because I think as a young global leader, sometimes I myself kind of have, I would say that, oh, am I okay to be here? Am I allowed to be here? And I know that, I guess, Michael, specifically, this could be a question for you. You talked about your position authority and moral authority and just developing yourself. Are there other ways that you think that you can kind of combat that? And do you still have that issue? Even now you have, you are a CEO of a company. So maybe Katie or Gibson, I'm just not sure if it'll always be within your life or how you can develop that better. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nicole. What a lovely question. Michael, would you like to take the lead on answering that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Firstly, I don't lie to people, right? So you're probably going to feel that, but it's okay. When you are in a state, be it anxiety, imposter syndrome, depression, you doubt yourself, it's very important to recognize that you can use that to your advantage. People that feel imposter syndrome are generally very intelligent, emotionally or intellectually sensitive people that understand people around them. They have that emotional intelligence to understand relationships. What do people think of me? How am I coming across? And how can I help this person? So what I'd say is, when you're in that moment or before that, you think it might hit, use what's called a focusing question. A focusing question is not a question that requires an answer. A focusing question is something that you say to yourself to focus your mind and focus you. So I'll give you one for imposter syndrome. How can I use this? Simple as that. How can I use this? Because if you are feeling that imposter syndrome, you think, oh, here it is. And every time it happens and I feel bad, and why do I feel bad? And I shouldn't feel like this because I've got 7 years experience and blah, 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 blah. As opposed to saying, I'm feeling this way. How can I use this? The answer might be, well, it's giving me a bit of like nervous energy. So that's good. It's better than being lazy. I could write my thoughts down. Maybe I could share how I'm feeling with somebody. Maybe it's helping me to understand that everybody, by the way, in business doubts themselves. They just don't all share it. So I would use focusing questions, not just for imposter syndrome, but for any time where you come up against what you think are the limits of your ability, which is a good thing, by the way, because it means you're charting new territory. You're not playing it safe, And so I would use that. So for example, say it was Gibson and he felt some imposter syndrome, I'm sure, at some point in the past, doubting himself with the signature. Well, that might make him recheck what he's just signed for. And actually, she's made a mistake, or I've made a mistake here. If I didn't check and have that nervous energy, it focuses you sometimes. It's much better than being somebody who doesn't care and doesn't have the awareness of other people. I've written blogs on things like this as well, so I can try and make sure that I include links as well, because I know sometimes when people are talking, it doesn't really go in, but if you can go away and listen to something or read something, it can go in further. Great question.
Great. And I'd just like to add to that as well. Michael and I have spoken about this before. Nervous energy. I remember one of my early leaders, and I was sitting down with her and I said, I don't know if I can take on that new role that you're offering me right now. And she said, why not? I said, no, I'm too anxious. And she goes, you know what? That's called nervous energy. And if you don't have that, then you're not growing. She goes, so jump in feet first and reframe that narrative. And I love that, Michael, you said the focusing question, because it's about reframing the narrative in our itty bitty crappy committee on our shoulder, telling us that we can't, and then we reframing it and saying, well, actually I can, and I want to, and I'm ready. So I really love that. Gibson, is there anything you wanted to add? I'm sure you've been really breaking the seams in terms of pushing, you're consulting, you're out there dealing with leaders. How are you overcoming this?
Yeah, so the imposter syndrome is real. And sometimes I actually feel it, but I think less frequent than a lot of other people, because by nature, my inborn trait is I am very aggressive, and sometimes I think I'm overconfident. So I think that's my weakness. Like, I think everything is possible. So I think the way to break it, like Michael said, is actually very, 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 very correct. And, it will work. I would just add to say that whatever you're doing in life, let's say, for example, myself right now, I'm consulting with small businesses. So what I do is I have a framework to do that. And that framework, I use it whenever I am doing the consulting. So, and I also have a strategy of how am I doing this, right? And I came up with that strategy after research and speaking with a lot of counselors and advisors. So as Steve Jobs would always say, if you have got 70% of the information that you really need right now to make the decision, then make it. No matter how you feel, whether you're nervous, whether you feel an imposter syndrome. The question is, have you done enough in terms of training, preparation, strategy, clarity to do whatever you're doing? If you are bold and you were training every day as your advisors told you, and now you're at the Olympics, it doesn't matter how you feel. Run, because you have done all that you could do prior to this preparation for the Olympics. So I think you should take it that way. Whatever you're doing, the only biggest problem is to do things that you are not prepared for. But if you're doing something that you have prepared for the past 2 years, for the past 6 months, it doesn't matter how you feel, because that nervousness is actually nervous energy that is trying to show you how serious the mission is, and interpret it that way. Whenever you feel the imposter syndrome, it is just telling you that, you know what, you are a leader and you're delving into uncertainty, and push, do it. You are meant for this. So that's how I interpret it.
Well done. I feel a motivational speaker coming through our midst at the moment. That was very, very inspiring, actually. If you're not having that nervous energy, you're not uncomfortable and you're not growing. I think that's really important. But I also liked your point, Gibson, on don't just think because I'm nervous that I haven't prepared. So don't jump into it blind. Do your homework. I think that it's definitely worth, you've obviously got your merits and you need to work towards your merits. So I think one other thing before we go on to the next question is a self-awareness and reflection of oneself. Check in with yourself and ask you the true questions and really be honest with yourself. That's the reframing the narrative internally. Michael mentioned earlier that knowing thyself. You see people going on like, those pop star shows and their parents going, oh yeah, you've got a lovely voice. And then they go out in front of the world and they don't. You've got to check in with yourself every now and again. You've got to have that support committee around you. The one that tells you the truth, the one that nurtures you and loves you, and the one that gives you that incubator to grow. So, the accountability, the nurturing and the incubator, I think are really key. So they're really good points coming to life here. Okay, we've got time for more questions. Are there any burning comments, statements, questions from the crowd? Any further thoughts on some of the points that Michael made earlier, or Gibson?
I was just going to ask if I could get Mr. Gibson's assessment on the state of financial inclusion in Africa.
Thanks, John. Gibson, would you like to take that?
Okay, so you want the assessment of financial inclusion in Africa, like right now?
Yeah, like at the most current moment, because I was hearing, I can't remember if it was a company in, I think, Somalia, which was doing a similar thing, like connecting remittances from other countries to the countries in Africa. Okay, thank you so much. So that's a very broad subject, especially if you're focusing on Africa. Very, very broad. Financial inclusion will, if you are talking about countries like Africa, will come in different levels, right? The financial ecosystem itself is not smooth, is not symmetric, and the information also travels in bits and pieces, right? Because we still have corners of people who cannot really access basic information. So that also affects financial inclusion. But when we are talking about financial inclusion in general, we're talking about the people who are at the bottom part of the ladder or the pyramid. People without bank accounts, people without access to other financial products like insurance and healthcare. And in Africa, we have about 500 million of people like that. So that is the numbers that I can give you right now. We almost have about 500 million people who do not necessarily have a bank account, right? So these fintechs are coming up with other, like mobile money and things, other financial products which have nothing to do with banks, but will help these people to have financial accessibility.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to answer that, Gibson, because it is a very broad topic. And John, I think it is an ongoing focus at the moment. Even here in the UK, working in payments and foreign exchange myself, there is a big focus on African countries right now in terms of how we help. But I think what Gibson, what you're doing is you're trying to pave the way as a leader. And I think this is the next point. And I just wanted to raise this because it's an observation. Thought leadership, someone who really is thinking about changing and paving the way for future generations behind them. I think the purpose of young global leaders and people under the age of 35 and even around that age gap can really make some serious change, because your ideation, your thought process, your access to information is just so in depth. You are seeing the universe in a different way. And I think that what Gibson is doing is he's leading through influence, through thought leadership, thinking about making global impact, global change. And I think that if you can take anything from the different styles of leadership, there's leading teams, there's leading people, there's leading families, there's leading communities, and then there's leading change. And I think that is the most impactful thing you can do, is create change for others to follow through. And that shadow that you leave behind you, that legacy, that's a part of leadership as well. How did you leave that legacy for others to pave the way through behind you? And so, Gibson, I think just your example of, wanting to make change in, social equity in terms of how we access money, credit rating, how you borrow money, big change there. Hopefully that was a helpful thought. We have 2 minutes left. I would like to finish on time because I know lots of us are in different places around the world. It was so lovely to see so many different people dialing in from all walks, all of life, all different places around the world. I would like to invite Doug. I saw Doug pop up on screen for any closing remarks.
My head is exploding. What an amazing conversation, both of you, for leading us through. I'm posting this on LinkedIn, Michael's list of 10, which is not exactly as Michael you wrote it, because I didn't quite catch up fully. So make any corrections if I got it wrong. But some of these concepts that you've talked about are just so important. And I'm really going to be thinking about these the rest of the day and overnight to fully grasp them. Not just for old guys like me, but really this program is for young people. And hopefully you all got some really very important information that, boy, I wish I had this 40 years ago. Michael, where were you? I should have met your father, it sounds like, earlier. So thank you for sharing about that. Gibson, it was great to meet you. And if you're still at Thunderbird, please stop down at our office, and happy to have a conversation and involve you in some of the things, because there were several things that you spoke about that really resonated with me about what you want to do. So Katie, thank you for leading. Thank all of you for attending. Back to you, Katie. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Doug. Wise words. And I think I agree with you, Doug. I wish I had access to this type of resource when I was coming out of school. And I really am passionate about giving others the opportunity to get access to information like this. And that's why, I love working with people like Michael and Gibson. Amazing. Loved listening to your story. Please connect via the chat. I'm going to keep it open for the next minute or two. If you'd like to share your LinkedIn, I think leveraging our network is key to growth, change, leadership. So please feel free to pop your LinkedIn address in the chat bar. If you'd like to reach out to Gibson and Michael, please reach out to us. We can connect you. They're an amazing wealth of resource if you want to develop your leadership skills. And today wouldn't be possible without all of you chiming in today to listen and participate in the conversation. So thank you very much. Watch out for next month's Young Global Leaders. It will be in your inbox very shortly. And thank you again, Michael and Gibson, for a lovely session today.
Thank you, everyone. And Katie, I want to give a shout out to Abdul Kasem. She's part of our interns in HQ.
Oh, thanks, Abdul.
Help us with this session, and is helping us with the upcoming ones. So thank you very much, Abdul. And the next one is in August. It's going to be in negotiations, and Abdul and Nicole are working with Dana on that one. So I invite you
awesome.
to watch for that one coming up.
Thanks, Cesar. And thank you so much, Abdul. It's great having you on to support with the Young Global Leaders. I can see everybody's popping their their contact details in the chat. So please be clicking on that. If you don't know how to save the chat, I think I might get Cesar to save that for us today if you need access to it. Or maybe Abdul, you could help as well with that.
Well, I would like to first of all thank you, Katie, for this great initiative, and Michael. It was really great to hear lots about global leaders, and Gibson. Thank you so much for coming. It was insightful. I hope everyone had a great time, and I'm looking forward for next month.
Thanks, Abdul.